Let's learn about ourselves by answering the Unpopular Book Opinions questions. I'll give a couple answers to each question because I have a lot of thoughts, and I'm a man possessed of some peculiar notions. I'm doing this video as a thought experiment for my own amusement. However, since I only have likes on my videos, I'm forced to conclude that my opinions, even if unpopular, are universally correct. So, in a way, this is for science. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain, or my subscriber count, or how numbers work. You can trust me, because I'm telling you stories. Let's get this show on the road. A popular book or series that you didn't like. GRENDEL by GARDNER is deeply disappointing to me. It's not interesting, and a poor companion to Beowulf to boot. The Name of the Rose. We get it, Umberto Eco. You're smart. I couldn't finish the book because I always had the feeling Eco was trying to impress me with how much he knew. Maybe that's my fault. However, the book became an exercise in the author trying harder to impress me than making a good story, which brings me to my next point. The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. I don't like this book at all. It is the epitome of style over very thin substance, and the novel is too concerned with craft shenanigans and allegedly clever twists. When I got to the end, my first thought was, oh, go to hell. This book wasted my time with bad parlor tricks, and I have no interest in continuing with the series. A popular book or series that everyone seems to dislike, but you love. Most of these books aren't hated, but I don't think they have the acclaim that other lesser works receive. The Half-Made World by Felix Gilman is an interesting book, with some symbols and metaphors that have really stuck with me over the years. Sure, the plot stumbles toward the end, but I've endured far worse. The Return Man by V.M. Zito is one of the more inventive zombie books I've ever read. It's not a great novel, but it's fun, gory, and constantly changing things up. The Lowtown series by Daniel Polanski hits the spot for me, being a gritty fantasy and hard-boiled noir mashup. I can understand why some people don't like it. I have plenty of my own criticisms of the series, but for me, these books hit more often than they missed. Artemis by Andy Weir is a book that some people intensely dislike. It's not as good as The Martian or Project Hail Mary, but I enjoyed it, and I think the animosity directed toward it is overblown. A love triangle where the main character ended up with the person you did not want them to end up with. In Moshi Moshi by Banana Yoshimoto, I would have rathered the protagonist go her own way rather than be with any of the romantic options that were available. With the Witcher series, Yennefer is a bad person, and she and Geralt are bad for each other. A popular book genre that you hardly reach for. With one possible exception, I don't hate any of the genres I'm about to list, but I rarely feel compelled to read them. They can be done well, if rarely, and I can appreciate them. However, I just don't get as much out of reading them as I do with other genres. I'll start by saying that young adult isn't a genre, but an arbitrary marketing categorization. Romance, or what passes for romance, also doesn't engage me. Isekai worked on me in elementary school with Narnia, and even that had diminishing returns. And The Wizard of Oz and Return to Oz movies. Since then, my dealings with isekai have ranged from disinterest to antagonism. It just doesn't work on me, especially this trapped in an MMO or video game subgenre. Related to that is my complete dislike of lit RPG. I don't even know how popular it is, and if it's a real genre. I just know I read one and thought it was the worst thing I'd ever read. I was afraid maybe I was being too critical and picked up another one by a different author, but it turned out to be just as bad. Its core features are anathemas to what I enjoy about reading. I don't want to read about someone clicking through menus, grinding experience, and quote-unquote leveling up. I still have a Super Nintendo and can do that on my own, with much better stories. A popular or beloved character that you do not like. Jay Gatsby. I just don't get it. I think the book is overrated to begin with, and Gatsby is, in many respects, the precursor to Patrick Bateman. And while I don't hate him, I think Harry Potter is one of the least interesting characters in the books that bear his name. A popular author that you can't seem to get into. I mean, depending on what counts as popular, the answer to this question is probably most of them. Looking at a New York Times bestsellers list for me is generally an exercise in total bewilderment. It's not even that I think many of those authors are bad, though some certainly are, but their popularity is mystifying to me. I'll stick to my wheelhouse and say John Gwynne, and to a lesser extent, Robert Jordan. With Jordan and the Wheel of Time, those books aren't terrible, but I've always had the feeling I read another, better story like this before, so it's easy to convince myself to put it down and read something else. It's probably why I never finished the series. With Gwynne, I just don't think his books are good. They're not terrible, but they are dreadfully mediocre. I'll talk about Steven Erikson later, and I have already stated my opinion on Jemison, so I won't belabor the point. A popular book trope that you're tired of seeing. This first one isn't about the written contents of a book, but I still think it's worth mentioning. Titles and cover art have become absolutely rancid. I don't blame a Game of Thrones for starting the trend of filling the shelves of bookstores with a blank of blank and blank book titles, which are unimaginative and an unholy abomination. I blame the greedy and spineless executives of the publishing industry for their cowardice and unwholesome desperation to mimic any popular trend so they can regress everything to the lowest common denominator to get their hands in everybody's pockets. Book covers have gone the way of movie posters and so aggressively drawn toward half a dozen archetypes that the saying about not judging a book by its cover is now truer than ever, because so many of those covers have become interchangeable. Unfortunately, on the artistic front, I'm afraid the increasing availability of AI quote-unquote art is only going to make things worse. A computer cannot invent pictures. It can only rearrange images. In terms of writing tropes, because I am an optimist, I believe almost all of them can be done well. It may not happen often, but it is still possible. The Chosen One trope comes to mind. I'll also say time travel and framed narratives also run the risk of encouraging me to put a book down, because so many stories botch them. I am, however, pretty much done with conspiracy theories. The X-Files was fun when I was a kid, but conspiracy theories are the product of lazy thinking. We have too much of this dreck in real life, so I no longer have any interest in seeing it in my fiction. A popular series that you have no interest in reading. The Kingkiller Chronicles by Patrick Rothfuss. I couldn't be bothered to make it through the first book, so that's the end of that. Any series by Brian McClellan. It's not his fault that I'm tricked for about 3/4 of the book, and then it turns toward things that do not remotely interest me. I just have to learn from my mistakes. The Horus Heresy. I like Warhammer and Warhammer 40k and their ridiculous, cranked to 11, grim-dark insanity because I feel like they're in on their own joke and playing it straight. Both Vermintide games are riotous fun, and I'm looking forward to Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader. However, almost none of my enjoyment comes from contemplating the labyrinthine lore of these settings. And we come to Malazan, but I don't think the series is as popular as its apologists make it out to be. Gardens of the Moon is po-faced rubbish that wears out its welcome immediately, and I have no time for it or its terrible style of description. The saying goes, the book is always better than the movie, but what movie or TV show adaptation do you prefer more than the book? Many adaptations of Dracula are better than the book, but I'm not sure if this is an unpopular or controversial opinion. Similarly, even though I'm a big fan of Silence of the Lambs by Thomas Harris, the movie eclipsed it, and the same can be said for Hunter S. Thompson's Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. As much as I do like Sapkowski's Witcher series, the video game Witcher 3 Wild Hunt is the best Witcher story. To Have and Have Not by Ernest Hemingway is not a good book, but the movie adaptation takes a lot of liberties with the source material and is exponentially better for it. Have you ever been bit by a dead bee? And maybe Game of Thrones. Disappointing ending at all. I found watching the series to be preferable to reading A Song of Ice and Fire. Even with judicious editing, this video sprawled much bigger than I initially intended. At several points along the way, I debated cutting more or even scrapping it altogether. Thankfully, I persevered thanks to my natural fortitude and alcohol. Whenever I faltered, I thought of you and how you need my opinions and guidance, by God. So what are your unpopular book opinions? If you don't feel like making your own video to answer, and who could blame you, go ahead and put your answers in the comments below. I know we're on the internet, but I'm sure we can all manage to be calm and respectful of each other's opinions, unpopular or otherwise. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my unpopular book opinions and peculiar notions. I'll have links below to my written analysis and reviews. If you appreciate what I'm doing here, you know what to do. If you're feeling generous, go to another small channel YouTuber and watch, comment, like, and subscribe there too, in order to help them endure the cruel vicissitudes of the YouTube algorithm. Until next time, live and be well.